It's a beautiful day in Sacramento. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I'm upstairs today. Now, we haven't got the upstairs unpacked or anything too much, but this is the view from the upstairs window. Like that. I don't know if we can see this. I'm going to cancel that there. So this is sort of at least we plan to make it sort of the library area. And as you can see, things are still in boxes and all in disarray, and we got some skylights here, and ceiling fan. Here's some of my books. As you can see, things are still wrapped up. The podium there is still wrapped up. But anyway, I thought I'd give you a peek. I don't know what, this isn't really a camera. And I don't even know if we caught any of that, because I don't know if the power is going. It looks like a couple people are logging in. Anyway, happy Thursday. Now, I think if I lean in here, you can see okay, but I just wanted you to see this beautiful window. Anyway, today I thought I'd do something a little crazy. I was going to read another little Crowley essay. I'll go ahead and do that soon, on blasphemy and the rights of Eleusis and stuff. But I ran across this book here. It's this is the first edition of it. There are subsequent editions, I think, by two publishers. But anyway, Secrets of Western Tantra, The Sexuality of the Middle Path, by Christopher S. Hyatt, PhD. Got a preface by Robert Anton Wilson, and anyway, this was officially out in 1989. Now, in 1989, I wasn't a published author or a writer or much of anything except a lodge master of Haru Raha Lodge OTO in Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. And I was 40 years old. Actually, let's start in 1988. And Christopher Hyatt, I don't think it's a big secret. His real name is Dr. Alan Miller. I joined Haru Raha Lodge and was initiated in Haru Raha Lodge, and was a very fun, active supporter of the lodge for a while. And I had no ambition whatsoever or plans to be a writer or anything, but I did do my Monday night magic class. And late, I think in 1988, I got a call from Alan, and to see if I might pen a little contribution to his newest book. And this was the book that he was writing at that time. And so started to bring some thelemic, magic-y, OTO-y kind of things into the subject of Tantra and sex magic, things like that, And I'd never done anything like this before. But, it's my rule of thumb never to pass up an initiation when offered. and never and try to seize an opportunity when you see it, even if you feel that you're not up to it. If it seems like a cosmic thing going on, so I said, okay, I'll write a little something for it. You can, if you like it, you can use it as an afterword or something like that in the book. And I didn't have a computer at the time. I just had an old Selectric IBM typewriter. And but my good friend Steve Abbott, Steve, if you're watching, hello. Hope you're doing fine up in Oregon and enjoying your pictures. He loaned me a word processor. Okay. So I wrote this in longhand, and then I put it on a word processor, is what they call it. And so it was my very, very first thing. Now I'm going to read it to you, okay, today. It's called Another Perspective on Infinite Love and Tantra. And, gee, I've just blacked out on us there. Okay. And believe me, you'll see here in just a moment, I had not honed I was not a wordsmith, to say the least. Okay, this is the very first thing. So I'm embarrassed when I read, how awkward and everything I sound. I still do, but this was, and I was 40 years old. I should have been writing much more eloquently than this. But anyway, I learned as a musician, never apologize for your music. So I'm not going to apologize, but I am going to let you know that I know that it also sounds like a pretty young, green Lon Milo DuQuette as a writer. Another Perspective on Infinite Love and Tantra by Lon Milo DuQuette. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. The myth of original sin is perhaps the single most destructive concept ever to influence the mental health of humanity. The first 4 chapters of Genesis may have been enlightening to the handful of adepts studying Kabbalistic cosmology, for whom and by whom it was written. But its misinterpretation and misuse by a menagerie of 2 millennia of priestcraft has proven to be the true original sin of Western civilization. Recently, on one of the Christian television networks, I witnessed a monstrous illustration. I was watching a children's program aimed at Christian pre-teenagers. Okay, I admit to a small level of spiritual masochism. A segment of the program was dedicated to questions mailed in by viewers in a sort of Dear Abby format. And the show's hostess would answer from a Christian perspective. One youngster wrote that his preteen friends were always telling him, quote, bad jokes, and had even passed around a magazine with bad pictures of women. Guilelessly, he wrote that although he knew the jokes in magazines were sinful, they gave him a feeling inside that he enjoyed. He wanted to know if his feelings were evil, if so, what he should do to get rid of them. After reading the letter aloud, the show's hostess, who was dressed as a cowgirl, answered in condescending baby talk that even though the youngster was still only a child, he, like all of us, had sinned against God because of the sin of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. The dirty feeling, her words, not his, the dirty feeling was caused by the presence of this sin in all of us. She counseled him to pray to Jesus, especially at bedtime, admit to him that he was a sinner, and invite him into his heart and ask for the strength not to enjoy the feeling. She then gave him the sage advice to tell his friends to stop telling bad jokes and sharing the magazine with him because they made him feel all dirty inside. Of course, most Christians have no knowledge or interest in the historic foundations of their faith. Now, that was a very broad thing for me to say, okay? If I was writing this today, I wouldn't say most Christians have no knowledge or interest in the historic foundations of their faith. But at the time, I was meaning this kind of very primitive evangelical Christian. Okay. They may be unaware that this obscene doctrine, this obscene concept, is part of church doctrine. However, few Westerners, Christians and non-Christians alike, have escaped the traumatic influence of this, quote, original curse and the grip it has held on the testes of our culture. I just throw testes around like the testes of our culture. That child, and perhaps millions of other sensitive young viewers of that program, became victims of a form of spiritual sexual child abuse as real and as deleterious as physical molestation. Those feelings were not dirty. They were a natural and wholesome unfolding of the creative impulse of his own innermost being. Feelings, if encouraged, nurtured, and mastered in an environment free of imposed guilt, can be the key to the liberation of the soul. But like countless others of generations before him, at the very moment of his awakening, he was shamed into denying, repressing, and eventually perverting that divine electricity each of us share with all creation. Eastern as well as enlightened Western thought, as readers of Dr. Hyatt's book will discover, traditionally have been more enlightened on this point. The conscious utilization of these energies for spiritual illumination is a science and an art developed over centuries of practice. In contrast with praying to God to help you not enjoy your sexuality, the gods of the East set examples of divine eroticism. Brahma and Sarasvati, Vishnu and Lakshmi, Shiva and Kali, all divine archetypes for worshippers to emulate in action, thought, meditation, and sexual intercourse. Under the heading Sex Magic, a little epigram to this heading. When you've proven that God is merely a name for the sex instinct, it appears to me not far to the perception that the sex instinct is God. Aleister Crowley. No, Aleister Crowley wrote that, not the God, Aleister. Okay. You want me to go on with this? Doesn't matter. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to try to get a better view there. I don't know if that's going to work. There is perhaps no more despised and sometimes revered figure in modern religious literature than Aleister Crowley. His tireless exploration of the extremes of spiritual experience and his outrageous behavior are surpassed only by his mastery of the English language and his ability to communicate his conclusions to serious students. Today, over 40 years since his death, 40 years, Uh, his writings have reached a level of international popularity never approached during his lifetime. Not even his worst detractors deny his influence on the esoteric sciences. The quality of his numerous published works reveals a genius of unmatched stature. Yet, in my opinion, his greatest contribution to mankind was the smallest works attributed to him, the Book of the Law. This revelation is called Liber al Vel Legis, better known as the Book of the Law, dedicated today, some might say channeled, to Crowley in 1904 by a, quote, praeter-human intelligence, unquote, calling itself Aiwas, a messenger from the forces ruling the earth at present. Now, there's a footnote here, and in those days, my footnotes were better than my text. I will not attempt to persuade the reader of the objective reality of the events referred to in the Book of the Law. I hate wonder stories. As a rule, they have a tendency to backfire in the face of one's religion. I suggest only that the interested parties obtain a copy of the Book of the Law and determine for themselves the value of the text. The Law is for All, which was published by Falcon Press at that time, is an excellent version containing the full text of the Book of the Law, a complete collection of Crowley's commentaries, related material, and an enlightened introduction by its editor, Israel Regarde. Like everything connected with Crowley, the Book of the Law is simultaneously inspires and repels. When I read it for the first time, I was so stunned by the contents that I followed Crowley's instructions at the end of the text and ceremoniously, it wasn't quite ceremonially, but ceremoniously burned the book. Afterwards, feeling very foolish, I immediately began searching for another copy to study and cherish. The passing years only increases its significance to me. Under the heading Infinite Love. Briefly, there are 3 short chapters attributed to the Egyptian gods Nuit, Hadit, and Rahur Kuit, respectively. Nuit is infinite space. She's represented as the goddess bending over like an arch of the night sky. She is the universe ultimately expanded, and her body contains all stars, galaxies, and suns, and the sum total of all possibilities of every kind. If infinity is symbolized by a circle, Nuit is the circumference of the circle. Her divine lover Hadit is also infinite, but absolute contraction. He is represented as a winged globe at the heart of Nuit. He is any point which has the experience of the possibilities inherent in Nuit. He is the dot in the center of the circle. Here we have 2 infinities, one ultimately expanded and large, and one totally contracted and small. Now, if the circumference is infinite and the center is infinite, they are both equally everywhere. They are always in contact. They touch, they rub, they embrace everywhere. Lovers on truly a cosmic scale. This interplay of eternal contraction, expansion of 2 opposing infinities creates finity. This finite field of operation is the foundation of the phenomenal universe and is represented in the Book of the Law by the God of the 3rd chapter, Rahur Kuit, the crowned and conquering child, the Lord of the present Aeon. Now, if I was to write a summary of those three deities today, although I agree pretty much with what I said here, and I'm proud of it, don't want to change it, but I'd probably say it a little differently and a little more textured, I guess if that's the word. Meditations on such abstractions can be very rewarding. I am above you and in you. My ecstasy is in yours. My joy is to see your joy. These are quotes from the Book of the Law. Above the gemmed azure, the naked splendor of Nuit, she bends in ecstasy to kiss the secret ardors of Hadith. Another, for I'm divided for love's sake, for the chance of union. This is the creation of the world, that the pain of division is as nothing, and the joy of disillusion all. Within its verses, the diligent student can discover techniques which can only be described as patently tantric. Hadith, for example, clearly identifies himself with the Kundalini. I am the secret serpent coiled about to spring. In my coiling there is joy. If I lift up my head, I and my Nuit are one. If I droop down mine head and shoot forth venom, then is rapture of the earth, and I and the earth are one. Readers familiar with the Upanishads may recognize in the imagery of this and other verses elements of the Panchangi Vidya, the sacrifice of the five fires, and other even more esoteric sexual teachings. We're almost through here, so don't get scared. Sex magic and the Mass of the Gnostic Catholic Church. A little epigram from Izzy Guilford from his letters from Papa. Okay, even in this very first little thing, I'm starting to invent people to quote. And Izzy Guilford is one of my son's goofy pseudonyms, nom de plumes. So letters from Papa would be me. Letters from me. Can you see the seeds of Rabbi Lama Ben Clifford in these little devices? Okay. Now that you know all of this is only an allegory for the sex act, your quest has become to discover what the sex act is an allegory. Izzy Guilford, letters from Papa. In the sanctuary of the Gnosis, the 9th degree of the Ordo Templi Orientis, is a secret technique of sex magic. Now, I'm going to read a footnote. The footnote to sex magic. At the risk of disillusioning thrill-seeking dilettantes of the occult, paranoid former investigative reporters, ill-informed New Age aura fluffers, psychotic television evangelists, or my mother, I feel I must reveal that the OTO rituals do not include animal or human sacrifice, cattle mutilation, forced copulation with members of either sex or inanimate objects, blood feasts or games of sudden death twister. Glad that's out of the way. The graded structure of the OTO is designed to generally prepare the individual to understand and competently apply this technique for magical purposes and spiritual enlightenment. The secret is so simple it could be revealed in 3 well-chosen words. But speech cannot adequately elucidate the full scope of its underlying theory. Like a universal solvent, it penetrates to the very heart of the mechanism of creation. The elements used contain within themselves all possibilities, And the ninth degree operator must not only be a skilled magician, but also a disciplined yogi. Unlike Goetia or other more traditional forms of magic where the magician is never quite sure of the success of the operation when performed, the success or failure of the ninth degree working is immediately, sometimes painfully obvious. It never fails to achieve a result. Whether or not it is the desired result depends entirely upon the skill of the operator. Here's a quote from Christopher Hyatt from his classic book, Undoing Yourself. Ritual is the tying together of things, emotions, events, and environments through the process of spontaneous imagination with the will to manifest. And then another quote from the Mass itself. And for as meat and drink are transmuted and for as much as meat and drink are transmuted in us daily into spiritual substance, I believe in the miracle of the Mass. That's from the Gnostic Creed. The primary ritual of the OTO is Liber 15, the Mass of the Gnostic Catholic Church. When celebrated publicly, the technique is executed symbolically. When celebrated privately, it is operated overtly. Consistent with the Gnostic tradition, the transubstantiation of the elements of the Mass, the host and the wine, require the participation and contribution of a female and male celebrant. The priestess assumes the identity of the goddess Nuit. I am the blue-lidded daughter of sunset. I am the naked brilliance of the voluptuous night sky, she says. And the priest, that of Hadit. I am the flame that burns in every heart of man and in the core of every star. I am life and the giver of life. Yet therefore is the knowledge of me, the knowledge of death. Now, in this particular Liber 15 itself, okay, is a celebration of the technique when it is executed, utilized, and performed by male and female celebrants. This does not mean that the essence of the secret can't be performed in any other combination, okay? The positive will still be the positive, the negative will still be the negative. This is, even though Liber 15 is an example of sort of, I guess, what you would call a white bread version, okay, the technique itself, the essence of the formula itself, still applies no matter what the gender or the identification of the participants is. So, and in this particular 1988, when I wrote this, I should have made that more clear, because everyone says, oh, that's your... No. It's just that in Liber 15, the example used is that of the male and female priest, priestess. After preliminary purifications and consecrations, they initiate a process of mutual arousal, culminating, what was I thinking? Culminating in the mystic marriage, wherein the elements now charged are combined. They are then Eucharistically consumed to manifest as the desired object of the operation. Anyone wishing to discover and master this secret, this most precious jewel of the sovereign sanctuary of the Gnosis, should make a serious and perpetual study of the Mass. Many OTO lodges celebrate it regularly, and it is usually open to all sincere and interested individuals. And that's where we're going to leave it today. I had just a touch more where I quote our friend Bob Wilson, but that's it for that. Okay, so much for a young 40-year-old green writer. A few months later, I'm so grateful to Christopher S. Hyatt or Alan Miller for giving me my first break in show business, if you will, because it was only a few months later, after this was published, that he and I would co-author 4 more books together in the next 2 years. But anyway, that's where we're going to end it today. Continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.